really like that he did, and Tom Wolfe did this, and um, a number of others in that new journalism phase, which is they wrote nonfiction as though it were fact, right? As though, as though, I'm sorry, they wrote nonfiction as though it were fiction. Like it reads like a novel. Like if you read All the President's Men, if you read The Final Days, if you read The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe, it reads like he's making this up because this is so exciting and so thrilling, and it's not stilted like nonfiction often was before. I do kind of an opposite. I write stilted. No, I don't. I put a lot of nonfiction in my fiction to make it feel rooted. So I do tons of research in my books, and I have just spent the last 2 days researching the intricacies of the U.S. Capitol building, the Botanic Gardens, the Brazilian embassy, and the National Zoo, because they're all locations in the book that I'm writing, and I'm trying to make sure that I get the details right. So this kind of bridge between fiction and nonfiction has always kind of fascinated me, I think. Really exciting nonfiction storytelling, or really accurate and researched fiction storytelling.
Well, this sounds like a perfect opportunity to talk a bit more about research and your habits, because I know with City Spies, City of the Dead, available now, esteemed audience, available this week, depending on when you're listening to it. Pre-order it, buy it, whatever. I know you actually...
Here's what kills me. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. You have a copy. I haven't seen a copy of that book yet. My copy hasn't arrived, and now 2 or 3 people have shown me pictures that they have. Hold it up for me. Let me take a better peek at that. Let me see the back. Let me see the back. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to get mine. Okay. All right.
I have 2 copies.
No.
They sent me
I assume that soon I'll have more. On the 7th, I'll just go ahead and buy them. But yeah, okay.
So I know with City of the Dead, you contacted an Egyptologist to help you with the research. But these are the City Spy series. Is why they're traveling to many famous international locations, the Great Wall of China, et cetera, et cetera. Do you get to go to some of these places firsthand, or is it enough to do the reading? How do you get yourself in the headspace of what it would be like to be in these locations?
Okay, so I'm currently writing the 5th City Spies book. The 4th one is the one that's coming out now. Add to that the 3 FRAMED books and the 3 Dead City books. So that's 10 novels altogether, 11 with the new one coming out. There are only 2 of those where I haven't been to the places that the books were set in. And those were the 2 books that came out that I wrote during COVID. That said, I don't know that I could afford it to go to Moscow and Beijing and Cairo, but afforded time or money or whatever. But I try to go to all of them, and I try to really research. For the new book that I'm writing now, my wife and I went to Venice, which is, that's a great excuse to be able to go to Venice, research there. And I did extensive research in Washington and New York. I've been to London, I've been to that part of Scotland where they're set, I've been to Paris, I've been to, so otherwise I've been, and I really I go with the researcher's mind, but also I go with, part of my life has been in film production. And so, I always have loved geography. I've always loved travel. I did a travel show for a number of years, and I did a show for the History Channel that went to places where famous things happen. And when I would go to these places, I want to learn about them, but also I want to know where to set the camera, right? So part of the job of scouting a location is you go, and so like if I am going to, let me think of okay, I did a story on the George Washington Bridge in New York for the History Channel. And so I went to New York, and I would figure out, okay, if I stand here in New Jersey at this park, I can interview someone and the background is filled with the bridge, and that's a good thing. Or if I go here, I can shoot on the bridge at the traffic coming. And I go and I scout out the locations. We went to, LA, and I would go, where do you see the Hollywood sign? Where do you see the Chinese theater? And you go, and then you get more detailed. I did a travel show in London, and I did a week just figuring out where I was going to put the camera once I got there, right? So I do the same with the books. I go to, and there's a scene that takes place in the train station, Edinburgh, Scotland, um, where they're following someone. I set it in Edinburgh Park because I knew I was going to be going there for another thing, and I went to I went to the train station. Then later that in the middle of the night, I went to the airport because there was a scene there, and I walked all around. And I thought, well, if I was making the movie, where would I set the movie? Oh, this is a really interesting location. And oh, from here, if you stand here and do this, then you can see something that you wouldn't realize you could see. And then I write the book based on that scout. So it really helps me be creative because the more you know, then the more you can go off. There's right now what I've just been writing this week takes place at the British Embassy and the Brazilian Embassy and in Washington D.C. And so I went there early in the morning and I took a bunch of pictures and I walked and I said, oh wow, so there's this great statue of Winston Churchill. And the way the statue is built, Churchill is taking a stride and he's holding his fingers up in the victory sign. And I knew this, but also it said on the plaque, I noted from research, it's built over the border. So 1 foot is in the embassy property, so it's in the United Kingdom, and 1 foot is in the U.S. And he's bridging the gap between England and the U.S. And oh, that's neat. But what I didn't know until I went there is across the street is Nelson Mandela, and he's holding up the power fist. Right, and so in front of the South African embassy. But if you stand behind Winston and you look at now, it looks like they're getting the morning paper and waving at each other because he's got his finger up and he's got that, and it's like saying, "Yo, Nelson, how's it going?" He's like, "Winnie, my man," and it's like, and so like I thought a kid will like that more than the facts of who these guys are. So that's the thing that I didn't know. And then across the street from the Brazilian embassy, which I needed because one of my characters is Brazilian, is this amazing thing, which I knew was there, but I wanted to go research, which is the Iranian embassy. So the Iranian embassy in Washington, D.C. has been empty since 1979, right? The Iranians in Tehran stormed the U.S. embassy. We cut all diplomatic relations. But the embassy itself is part of Iran, but we don't have relations with them. So they can't come here to do anything with it, but we can't do anything to it. So there's a building in some of the most prime real estate in Washington, D.C. that sat vacant for 40 years. And if you go there, like my math right, is it 40? Yeah, over. And so the windows are boarded, and it's just this really eerie, haunted house. I'm like, well, that's kind of neat. And so I went there early one morning, hoping I wasn't going to get arrested because I didn't know what the laws were, and I just started taking pictures so that if I want to use this, I can use. So I do that. I have pictures, I have them on my phone, I load them on my computer, and when I'm writing scenes, I pull up the research photos to help me set the stage, but also to remind me of what did it sound like? What did it look like? What did it smell like? How crowded was it? What was the feeling there? And so I really try to research the places as good as I can that way. The ending of that book, book 5, takes place at the New York Public Library, and I got a tour behind the scenes there with my editor and my wife, and it's unreal how cool it is behind the scenes. And one of my favorite parts is the fact that the stacks in the middle of the library no longer hold the books, that their books are now kept in a more environmentally protected area that's underneath Bryant Park. But the bookcases are empty, but they're still there because the bookcases hold up the building. Because when they built the building, they thought, well, there'll always be bookcases. So the bookcases are actually towers, and then the floors just go up to them. But there's a slit, and you can look down and you can see all the way down to the ground because they're really giant beams that are holding up the building. And then these cool little things that look like they're droids, little tram that carry the books on tracks to and from. And it's like, only being back here doing the research, I could do a generic description if I had never been here or if I'd never researched. They go behind the scenes, and I could have made up stuff that would probably, but it would have been, yeah. But by going and finding all the stuff that's really there, I feel like I can now really write something exciting that makes you feel like you've been there. Because that was what was great about From the Mixed Up Files, Miss Paisley Frankweiler. I was a kid in Atlantic Beach, Florida, and I was reading this book about this girl who ran away and camped out every night inside the Metropolitan Museum of Art while she was hiding from her parents. And that was a real place. And the artworks she was talking about were real artworks. And that jump is what hooked me. That, oh, I could go, when I go to New York someday, I can be in this room that's in this book. And I wanted that.
Out of curiosity, when you're scouting for the History Channel, these famous locations,
Yeah.
is part of your contractual obligation to look around and wonder, could that have been built by ancient aliens? Could that have been built by ancient aliens?
That's only if you're working for, I think, Discovery. Discovery, if you're working for Discovery, when you're working for the History Channel, you're only supposed to look back and not in the alien component. That's part of the contract. But still, you can't help but wonder sometimes.